Get more confidence. Get that promotion. Get moving up the corporate ladder. Get a better gig with an MBA from Mays Business School at Texas A&M University. Whether you're starting out or stepping up, now you can take your career to a whole new level with a full-time MBA in College Station and convenient weekend options at Houston City Center. Texas A&M has a program to suit your schedule. Visit mba.tamu.edu. And Giga Maggie.
Howdy, welcome to Mays MasterCast. I'm Shannon Deere, the Assistant Dean for Graduate Programs, here with your wonderful host, Ben Wiggins.
What is good, Shannon? How are you?
Yeah, good. Doing all right. How about you?
I am doing well. It is a rainy and yet a beautiful day in Aggieland.
Yeah, the sun has come out this morning and the birds are going crazy and it's kind of glowing, but it will rain again today. But it is beautiful.
Most likely. Now. It's supposed to rain all week, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'll take some of that, I'm sure.
No doubt.
Today on the show, we welcome Henry Talamantes. He is an entrepreneur who has had many accomplishments and many challenges along the way, as most entrepreneurs have.
Surely.
While attending high school full-time, Henry founded and ran a large-scale vending company. He won a statewide entrepreneurship award for that business, which included recognition on the Texas Senate floor.
Mm-hmm.
While completing his degree at Mays, he created a successful e-commerce retail apparel company. You might remember the flowy dresses, I think was how he described it, which was not necessarily his passion, but was definitely an opportunity to find an inefficiency in the market. And Henry then spent 3 years at Merrill Lynch before co-founding Fetch Package in 2016. At Fetch, Henry helped build the company from idea to 15 plus locations and over 300 team members in less than 3 years. Henry recently departed from Fetch and started sharing his knowledge and lessons learned with multiple startups across the company. And now that's led him to serving as a formal advisor for 5 VC-backed logistics and PropTech companies. His newest venture is e-Longation, a construction software company aimed at large multifamily developments. He is, again, leading growth strategy as Chief Revenue Officer with e-Longation. Henry has also served the community along the way of his busy adventures and business ventures. He also served as the president of the Dallas A&M Club in 2018 and is always looking to mentor former students as they explore the world of startups. Henry and I also share a love for Hawaii, although I was surprised to find out that Henry's love may be even deeper than mine. So we look forward to you getting to hear the episode.
We hope you enjoy the show.
We welcome Henry Talamantes to the show. It is a pleasure to have you here, sir.
Howdy. Pleasure to be here, Ben.
So this is a loaded question right now, but how is your week going?
It's good. Yeah, I know last time we talked, I had a lot going on. May was a rough month for me, but June is good. We're starting off good. And I got to look forward to this all week, so it's exciting.
That's very kind of you. And 2020 has been a heck of a year for a lot of people, kind of for the whole planet in some respects. But
crazy times.
What is your favorite superpower?
So I was listening to David's podcast, and his was like so intricate, right? And I was like, dang, I need a better answer. But when I started thinking about it, my superpower hasn't changed since I was a kid. It's always been invisibility. But I think the reason changed, and I was like, why do I still want that as an adult, right? And so I started thinking about it, and I think it's because I'm one of those people that my mind is always going. And I'm just like constantly thinking and just, brainstorming, and I just hard for me to turn it off, really hard. So it got me thinking to a very pivotal time in life where I just quit my job cold turkey and started getting into startups. It was when I was cresting 30, but the reason I was able to make the clean jump is I quit my job cold turkey, and then in a freak out, I went to visit a buddy and ended up staying in Hawaii for a month.
Yeah.
I've been obsessed with Hawaii since, and I've skipped a lot of trips and just kept going back to Hawaii, even though it's very expensive. And I haven't been able to pinpoint why besides a feeling. And I think it's Hawaii lets me escape from me constantly thinking about things. So I think maybe a fantasy of the invisibility is me being able to like turn off my brain and just unwind for once.
Huh. That's a really interesting answer. I've only been to Hawaii once. When I was in college, we played against the University of Hawaii. They beat us. But yeah, we stayed. It was kind of our nice trip for the year, and we stayed at this nice resort. And I ended up, I think it was because the coaches knew that like I was just kind of a homebody and wasn't going to get in any trouble. So I ended up with a room to myself, and true to form, I didn't go get in any trouble. I just kind of sat there and like played video games and looked out the window at the ocean for like 6 days. Yeah. It was amazing.
There's not much trouble to get into out there, but I don't know. I'm obsessed with it. I tell everybody about it. My end goal is to end up there eventually.
Yeah.
Pretty early in life. So, I mean, I think the best way to describe it is like Hawaii is like a feeling or a vibe, which has some parallels to being an Aggie. But
that's true. That's true. For our listeners, where did you grow up?
Grew up in El Paso, West Texas. Real West Texas, far West Texas.
Yeah. How many in your family?
Just me and one sister, Brittany. She's 5 years younger.
Okay. What did your parents do and how did that impact you?
So my dad is a mechanical engineer. Well, they're both retired. Mechanical engineer, and my mom is a retired elementary school teacher. So a couple different roles, but I think on my dad's side, that's where I get the very business analytical entrepreneurship part of me. Taught me about stocks and money from a very young age, had me read Rich Dad Poor Dad and taught me how to think analytically, taught me chess and Monopoly at a very young age, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Always supported my entrepreneurial spirit as much as he could, because engineers are very analytical, but they don't go all the way to like full blown business. And then my mom was a PE teacher. And so it was funny in my household growing up because my dad was like the prototypical engineer nerd, like didn't like sports at all, wanted to tinker, always inventing, more of an inventor really. Yeah. So my mom was she was on the practice D1 basketball squad in college. She was a PE teacher. She hated when I was playing Nintendo. So she was the one that kept me active. And made sure, obviously, I was doing well in school because she was a teacher. So they both had probably, now that like I'm maturing into like my more, I don't know, stable form. I think they both had an equal amount of influence in very different ways, but both very good.
Yes. By the way, I always appreciate the fact that you say cresting 30. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, it was a pivotal moment, man. I disappeared to Hawaii. I almost didn't come back.
Yeah.
Sorry for another day.
Yes. What was your first job?
So I've been an entrepreneur since I was before I could really talk. I mean, my first business was like I was 3, I think, in preschool. And so my mom had gotten me Legos, but like big ones for little kids. And so I would build, instead of building like a fort, right, I would build a store. I would build a storefront. And I'd take like my drawings from school, from preschool, and I would place price tags on them. What grade I got. So if I got a 90, it was like 5 cents, right? If I got 100, that was 10 cents. I'd go on the phone and I'd call my relatives and I'd say, I'm having a store. And my grandma would come and give me like a quarter or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was like my first foray into entrepreneurship. And my first actual job and one of the only like real jobs I ever had, especially as a kid or corporate jobs, was me and a couple of buddies did outbound telemarketing at at a company that was selling AT&T long distance service to the 5 boroughs in New York. So we were calling the 5 boroughs on the weekends because we were in school, cold calling them. And so, this is back in the day of like everybody had a house phone. So you're bothering people during times they don't want to be bothered. So I think the thing I took away from that was, one, we were making almost as much. I went to a medical magnet school. So there was a program where you could become an LVN. So we were making almost as much as LVNs, as our friends that were being LVNs, having a lot more fun. And it was just like such a chill job because we were just goofing off. So I learned you could make a lot of money in sales.
Yeah.
But I hated the rigid structure of it because it's a call center. So I also learned that I never wanted to work for anybody else again.
Outbound sales to New York City. That sounds. You probably cut quite the chops in that process.
Yeah. I mean, I got scared. I got learned not to be scared of the phone and protection and a lot of basic sales skills. So it set me up pretty well.
Yeah. And what was your greatest challenge as a child?
I struggled with this one because I didn't know. My parents did a really good job, and I didn't have many struggles except for health-wise. I had really bad asthma, and then I had pediatric cancer.
Yeah.
So I don't think that in a previous conversation, again, I don't think that the morbidity and the long-term effects of that psychologically really hit me until later in life.
Yeah.
Because I think, I don't know, I didn't think it was that bad back then, or, I don't know, maybe I just blocked it out. But those two were probably pretty hard. The asthma is more funny and more lighthearted because my mom was like, no, you're not going to have asthma. And she would just force me into very cardiovascularly inclined sports and force me to run. And she would tell my coaches, like, he can't not run, like, make him run. So
yeah.
Send me to soccer practice, for instance, where it's all running, with 2 inhalers, and tell my coach was like, no, he can't stop. And so eventually, and my uncle was a pediatrician, so like it was all like, he would try to help me. But eventually my lung capacity expanded so much that I outran asthma. So
wow.
Great to that, but it was hard for a while.
Yeah, I bet so. You talked about pediatric cancer, and Kyle and I have a friend who is fond of saying that entrepreneurs frequently come from chaos or like a chaotic upbringing. And when you and I spoke about this a week or so ago, I wondered if that was, I wondered aloud if that was the chaos in your upbringing. Have you thought about that anymore? Like, do you think?
Tried to be very self-aware. And psychology in general interests me, and also it's applicable to my career. So
yeah,
I've toyed with a lot of those ideas, and I think that where it ended up manifesting itself was that so it was at a very young age, at 2 years old, and so there's a period until 18 where like I had a high morbidity chance. So my mom, who I've always been super close with. One, I can't even imagine what she went through, but she for a while like had the underlying feeling. So sometimes I would see her freak out about it, and I would freak out about it. And so for a while, until it was 18, or it switched in there from 2 years for once every 2 or twice every year to once every year. But for a while, I was flying out to Houston for like hardcore CTs, MRIs yearly, for my entire adolescence. So I think that it instilled like a deep sense of like our own human morbidity. Just like, in the old story of like the guy they used to hire when a Roman general came back from battle and he was riding in the chariot, they would hire a guy in his ear to say, memento mori or whatever it is. And it's like, remember, even you will die.
Yeah.
And so for a while, like I even had that as like a thing of mine, because I've been so focused on like, you never know when life can be taken from you. So make something of the life that you've been given, and something that's going to change the world. Really, I want to change the world while I have the time. because I think I have this, like, you don't know.
And we'll go a little bit out of order here. You have developed quite the risk profile. Tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties in. I think that because I have this natural inclination, I think, like, I'm not sure how long my time is. I have a natural inclination to constantly risk it all, or risk a lot more than most people, because I really want to do what I want to do while I'm here. And that's the most important thing to me, to accomplish that. I feel like if I don't do the things that I've set out in my head, I've wasted the life that I was given. So I probably take more risks than, I don't know, 99% of the people you know.
Yeah.
Laid literally on the line multiple times, and sometimes friends look at me and they're like, "You've done this and this, and you have this." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, but you wouldn't have done the stuff that I've done." I mean, there's been times where I've been like, rock bottom is a little inside joke that we have with friends, but like financially or emotionally, and the stuff that I've given up and lost, like 99% of people would never even come close to what I've done, but that's just how I'm built. And to me, I don't think of it as risk at all. The concept of risk never crosses my mind. For me, it's like, I'm going to get that. I'm going to make that happen. I don't care what it takes to get there.
Yeah. Let's talk about your story as an entrepreneur, from Mr. Snacks or all the way back to, selling your drawings. But from wherever you want to start, bring it on forward.
Yeah, the rest were pretty childish things up until Mr. Snacks, probably. Probably the funniest one was my best friend growing up went to get his MBA after he left the Navy, and he credited me in the little Facebook post he did. And he was like, "I want to thank my best friend Henry from when growing up, when we would sell whatever we were selling, because every week it was different to the neighbors." He credited me with teaching him cost allocation. Because even at a young age, before I even knew anything about economics, I would say, "This is my parents' house and our appliances and our stuff. So I get 60% or I get 70% and you get the rest." And no one taught me that. I don't know how I got the concept. It just came to me. So, but anyways, after that, so my dad, like I said, was very good at nurturing this, and he wanted me to pursue it because he dabbled in it, but he saw like his main role to provide for us and stuff like that. So he was more like trying to make sure that I was able to do it if that's what I wanted to do. So we dabbled a few times, and like, what can we do together as a father-son, and what can we start? So back then in the day of classifieds, we were going through like businesses for sale. That's how you used to find businesses for sale before like forums were a thing. And so we found an older guy that was retiring from a vending route. Really old guy, had a cane, so he just couldn't do it anymore. Really, really nice guy, about 10 machines, I think. And so we bought the route and we built it up together. And my dad basically just helped me with like accounting and inventory and stuff. And I was the one that went and took care of the machines and sold the new accounts. I would refill and et cetera, et cetera. And then we tried to do it when I left to college, but no one ever cares about your business like you do. So we had to sell it eventually again. But by that time, I had grown it to a pretty large size just from selling new accounts. And then I almost went to TCU. TCU was my second choice after A&M because I won an entrepreneurship award from TCU, Texas Youth Entrepreneur of the Year, my senior year of high school for the vending business.
And you were recognized on the Texas Senate floor for that, if I'm not mistaken.
So they took us down on the bus, and so my rep at the time brought me out and was like, the guy from my district, just won Texas Youth Entrepreneur of the Year. Yeah. So it was fun. I mean, I was a kid and it was fun, and it was very rewarding to to think that someone cared, because you're just playing with money and stuff, and it's just you and your dad. And it was really fun to have people say, like, I don't know, like, youth entrepreneurship is a thing, because back then it wasn't. I mean, it was a completely different environment. Like, no one supported it, or like really, especially not in Texas, at least.
Right.
So I really admire TCU for doing that program. They're bleeding edge in Texas. Like, no one else was doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that definitely molded cemented my, I guess, view of entrepreneurship from like hobby that my mom says I can't have a TV, so I'm just going to go find stuff to sell so I can have a TV, which started. And it morphed into, oh, wow, like this is a career and I can actually follow this seriously.
Right. So then you start another business in college.
I started a few, but the most successful was junior year of college, college dresses. So the flowy t-shirt dresses that everybody knows now, and they've gone through a few iterations. But back then there was no big retailers doing them. Retail websites weren't a thing. Shopify wasn't a thing. So it was just Pruitt's Fabric, and then the chick that has like the small retail store on Northgate, or back then that's how it was. So one day I'm in my tailor, and personal friends with him, funny little guy, little Dominican guy, Juan. So me and him are just shooting it, and I see these big boxes.
Wait, is this guy's in College Station?
Yeah.
That guy's my tailor.
Really?
Yeah.
Juan?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. EDT, or what is that the name of the place?
EDT, yeah. Tell him Henry from College Dresses says hi.
I will do so.
Friends. Yeah. So I see all these boxes, and I'm like, Juan, you're the guy that makes these for Pruitt? He's like, yeah, I don't know. It's work for me, right? And I was like, well, if you don't mind me asking, how much do you pay? How much does he pay you? Because I knew, girls love those things. I knew how much they cost. Pruitt was selling them like $80 to $90 at the time. He was paying Juan $8 to $10, and I was like, this guy's ripping you off. And I felt bad, like he didn't know English that well, blah blah. And I felt like he was going to take advantage of. So I was like, Juan, sell me some dresses, and I'll go sell them directly to the girls, and I'll give you, double the profit. And so I went, and I went to my friends that were in sororities, and I asked to go to their Monday meetings. And I just went at the front of the meeting, and I was like, hey, you guys know me, I'm so-and-so's friend, right?
Right.
My girlfriend brought me to the AKL house. I was like, everybody knows me. I went to the date party. I married his boyfriend. I make these dresses now, and guess what? They're $30 less than Pruitt's. And I had my hands full, and I couldn't keep the order. I couldn't keep them in stock because back then they were custom before we figured that part out. But so I had to make the website basically to intake all the orders. And then from there, because SEO was so non-existent back then, people found us randomly on the internet just because we had a website. And even though it was very like basic and Aggie colors, eventually we did, a ton of schools. I mean, I forget how many, 10, 12, 15, I don't remember, but from everywhere, Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Houston. And it was fun. It was, I learned a ton. And that's when I realized that you don't have to be an industry expert. And that's kind of been my philosophy since then. Everybody's like, oh, you like business, you like entrepreneurship. What do you like to do? What's your industry? And I'm like, I'm really, really good at marketing inefficiencies and figuring out how to exploit them.
You said, okay, so the thing in particular, the thing that you just said kind of pinged, you're really good at seeing market inefficiencies. You're really good at seeing market inefficiencies and figuring out how to exploit them. What if you were to, so some of that is just instinct, you just have it. But if you were going to try to teach someone how to do that, what would you tell them to look for? Like what kinds of patterns would you tell them to seek out?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the psychological profiles, I strongly believe that people absorb information and learn in very different ways.
Yeah.
I learn, and I've known this for a while, is I need an example. Like, tell me the concept, and once I understand it, they give me a real world example.
Yeah.
So for people like me, some people they have to dive into it academically and et cetera, et cetera. But for people like me, they need more examples until they can connect one to something that they know intimately. Because at the end of the day, you do have to know something about it, right? I was a college student. All my friends wore these dresses. I knew the price points, et cetera, et cetera. So you do have to know the basics of it, at least the economics of it.
Yeah.
I'll give another example from when I was way younger, like 16, 17, my first car. I needed a part for my first car, and I went to the junkyard to try to save money. And it was like $40 or whatever, right? And I knew on eBay it was $250. So I went and I bought that same part for all the other, I used to be like into Japanese like race cars anyway, stuff like that. I went and bought that same part for other very popular imports, right?
Yeah.
I made $3,000 in a month at like 16. So you have to know a little bit about it, but not much more. You just need to know the unit economics of it. And I think that if you just think of things that you use every day and you learn the unit economics of those things,
Yeah.
really you'll find an inefficiency.
I like that. So you graduate from college, you go to Merrill Lynch. What made you choose the more certain road rather than diving full bore into the chaos as someone whose risk profile is, so like far right on the, so many standard deviations away? Yeah. Why'd you go that route? What made you do that?
I didn't, to be honest. I waited until the house was on fire. Like the GIF, I love GIFs. I'm the GIF master if you want to challenge me. The little dog GIF where like there's fire around him? Like, yeah. It was me at the end. Like I got a small loan from my parents. Like I tapped everybody. Like back then venture capital wasn't a thing. My mentors at Mays told me to go to the library and look at the stacks and like look up demographics from like 4 years prior. Like no one, especially in Texas, again, like Texas was very behind on all this. So there was no one that told me what to do. So I turned it into a cash cow. Like I was making a ton of money. My margins were like 80% for a manufactured product. That's insane.
Yeah.
I spec'd out a brand new Beamer. I bought a house, like the whole deal. I was at the tap dropping like hundreds of bucks at piano bar. It was a lot of fun. For like 6 months, instead of buying the warehouse and the materials I needed, I was blowing it all. Because even though I was a management major with an entrepreneurship focus, like they don't teach you any of that. It's very hard to keep up with what you can do entrepreneurial wise in school. And so I waited until the end, and I by the time I realized what I had done, I was too deep in a financial hole. And so my options were go back home and do a business there, or stay in college station and get a real job and save money, and then just get myself out of the hole and then start a new business once I got myself out of that hole. And so El Paso is a beautiful city, and it's really safe. Everyone thinks it's all like, it's on the border, but really it makes like the safest cities in America every year because it has so much like federal presence there. But it's horrible with jobs and industry. And I knew that if I went back, my economic opportunities weren't going to be as great, and I'd fall behind career-wise. So I thought I would be better served learning from a big company than, going back home. And funny enough, I ended up having to go home eventually to get the Merrill Lynch job because I graduated at the height of the crisis in 2008. So banks weren't hiring. So I got the interview in El Paso because my buddy was there, and I was like, look, I don't want to stay here. And I got to be honest, this is to the director. I was like, I got to be honest. If I get this job, I will leave as soon as I can. He's like, I don't care. Give me a year, make me look good, hit your numbers, and I will give you a rack wherever you want. Kill my numbers. And he's like, you made me look good. Where do you want to go? And he made like 2 calls, and I was in Dallas. And so Dallas was always my end game. That was always where I wanted to go. From college station days, probably. So, that's always kind of been a theme. Like I think in life, I think of life backwards, or I evaluate my goals in reverse, like where I want to go. And then I make sure that whatever decisions I'm making now are going to get me towards that.
Right. How would you encourage other people to think about the choice between going for it or the whole spectrum of that, between taking the plunge now, saving a little money, or just taking the safe road? Like how would you encourage people to think like that, since not everybody wants all the same things in life?
Yeah. This is hard because entrepreneurship is used so broadly now.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, right? But posting pictures of, your car on Instagram or trading Forex is not being an entrepreneur. And more so than that, there's a huge difference between being an entrepreneur, a small business owner, and being an entrepreneur trying to do a startup. And I think that more people need to talk about the difference in those, and that it's okay to do either. They're just very different. They have the strategy is different. The things you have to go through is different. So being a small business is Henry and Ben are going to do pizzas. Pizzas are already widely accepted. Ours tastes better. Buy ours instead. Entrepreneurship, you creating something new, so you have to educate the market. You have to have brand awareness. You have to create a go-to-market. So it's a lot more work, but that work is usually awarded because since you're creating a new category, the numbers are bigger in general. So people first need to decide, like, which one of those people are you? Like, do you like running a business, or do you like the innovative building of it and you want to change an industry or change the world?
Yeah.
And there's no right answer, but I think that's the most important question to ask yourself. And like you said, when is now? I said this the other day when we chatted. I should have gone home and started a business. Even though I learned a lot at Merrill Lynch and I was able to apply that B2B knowledge in what I do now and how I get I've done so well, I would have learned some other skill and used that in businesses instead. And I think that nothing teaches you more than running a business. And I wish I would have done it earlier instead of getting stuck in banking for 6 years.
Yeah. How did you end up shifting gears? Tell us about Hawaii. Tell us about that whole process.
Yeah, I love talking about Hawaii. So, like I said, I was cresting 30, and I wasn't married, didn't have any kids, but I knew I wanted some. Still not married, don't have any kids. If you want to get married, don't start a startup. That's a new story for another day. And I was like, I know that the risk that you can take once you have a family that you're supporting, right, or children even more, the risks that you can take are minuscule versus me, like going to broke, like multiple times. Like I never could have put my family through that. So I knew I needed to do it now.
Yeah.
So I just went out at the top. I was doing great at my job, making tons of money. And I just quit my job, sold my, BMW, and just started looking for startups to join in Dallas. And the reason I left to Hawaii was because there are no startups in Dallas. So it's very hard to find a sales job unless you're a developer, obviously. It's very hard to find a job at a startup unless you're a developer. Because normally CEOs do the sales themselves at the onset. And I wanted to get in really early and really feel like I was building it. So I freaked out and I was like, man, did I just make the worst decision of my life? And that was compounded by the fact that I was pretty good at my job. So all my coworkers and old bosses and stuff were like, hey, do you want a job? Do you need a job? And I freaked out. And my buddy was going anyways for his birthday. So I latched on to that for a week. And then I had another buddy, both fraternity brothers from A&M, who was in the Marines flying helicopters out there. And he's like, man, just come out early and hang out with me. I was like, when? He's like, now. It's like, okay. So I left early because he had a sick condo on Waikiki Beach. So, that helped, right? It was free rent.
Sure.
I hung out with him for a few weeks and then did the birthday with my other buddies and really cleared my head. And like I said, it allowed me to stop thinking and stop questioning myself and questioning, was that the right decision? And it allowed me the clarity to really say, like, you know what? This is right because this is what I've always wanted and I have to try it. So I came back. I gave myself 3 months, and it just happened that it was Dallas Startup Week, just kind of like a mini South by. And I met my co-founder for Fetch, and I was working on another apartment amenity app idea, and his package idea was better, so we linked up and we started that.
Tell it. What can you tell us about Fetch?
You know, it was not a planned exit. It was a rough exit that it wasn't my idea. So I can't say too much because I'm still a shareholder. So there's some covenants there that I have to be careful about. But, you know, I think that it was the right thing at the right time. I was looking for a startup that I could add value to, and I had a very unique skill set. Like B2B C-suite sales is like a very niche part of startups. A lot of startups, they're always like B2C, like retail stuff.
Yeah.
And then add that on top of being in Dallas, and there not being many startups here. And then add that on top of, I wanted to be at the beginning. So looking at someone that was just starting. So it's what I needed. And we lucked out and we hit it big, and it's done really, really well. Probably one of the more darling startups of Dallas.
Yeah.
And I got to meet the ecosystem. And I think that was what was important for me. Because when I was younger, like I said, I'm always thinking like where I'm trying to go in my end game is I eventually want to get into VC. So I used to ask VCs or other investment banking types, how do I get into VC? You know, now, what do I do now? Should I go get my MBA? They're like, no. Okay, well, can I just start now? No. Well, how do I get in? Like, well, they don't really have any staff. You just got to buy your way. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
You start your own startup, and then you make enough money, and then you buy in as a partner. Or you go get your MBA, and then you become an analyst, and you're an analyst at a bank for 5 years, and then you try to flip in. And I'm like, well, that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
The business. So it was what I was trying to do and what I needed to do to break into the circle, because not many people, PE and VC are the hardest things to get into, period. So not many people like to talk to you if you're trying to get a job in those things, and there's very limited ways to do it. So I'm glad that we did, and we did really well. We grew it from nothing to over 300 employees, or now, goodness, they probably have at least 600-700. They're probably in 20 different cities now. I mean, it's huge. And I'm really proud of what we built.
Let's talk a little bit. One of the things that we talked about last week was the workflow and the workload. And, you know, as you said earlier, entrepreneur, you know, now what are the jobs that people want? Actor, athlete, musician, entrepreneur. That's the Mount Rushmore. And
influencer.
Yeah, influencer. Yeah, you're right. Influencer. But I think that people don't understand, you know, many people want to be an entrepreneur because you don't have a boss, but it's a lie. The market is your boss, and the market is one of the most ruthless bosses there is. So let's talk about the workload. Let's talk about the work. Like you talked about falling asleep on airplanes. What are those stories?
Yeah, I think that it's what I said earlier. It's like everybody, and the media hasn't helped. Like they glorify these outliers of success, like Zuckerberg and Bezos and Musk, and they don't cover like the nitty gritty, right? As to like what people actually went through to get there.
Yeah,
and why those like the Colonel didn't start until he was 50 or whatever. Like that's why those like the guy that did Patron and then the shampoo, John Paul Mitchell, like was homeless and he slept in his car. Like people don't talk about that, but believe me, I met a lot of entrepreneurs and everybody has that story.
Yeah.
And sometimes people think it's really easy, or I get to sleep in or do whatever I want because I'm an entrepreneur. And it's the opposite, because when you're not there, no one else is there to do your job and no one else cares. And so you have to always be on, and that's really, really hard for people to do. And the other thing is you have to give up a lot. Like I've lost 2 relationships probably now to startups where I thought I probably would have gotten married to these people, and it was just so much stress, like on accident almost, that I put on the relationship from the startups. And I went from, I had just broken 6 figures at Merrill Lynch in working in finance, and then like boom, back down to like, I think we paid ourselves 35 grand the first year at Fed.
Yeah.
At 30 years old, like it's just life changing. It's really hard to go back that much as far as spending. So I think that it's you give up everything for it, and I'm lucky that it worked out for me, because a lot of times it doesn't. Like 9 out of 10 times it doesn't. And you have to be ready to say, okay, this one didn't. Got to do another one. Got to do another one. Got to do another one. And not many people have like fortitude to go through that, because they want it for the wrong reason. I do it because I like to build and I want to innovate and I want to change stuff. If people do it for the money or the glory or the fame or whatever, like they'll never get it done, because that doesn't give you like the ability to get up after you got beat down working 12-hour days for a year.
Yeah. So you get there, and then you end up departing from the company. As you said, it wasn't a planned exit. What did you learn well, first of all, what was the best moment for you in the whole thing?
I think so. We went through a few institutional rounds. We were building it, like the difference between the startup and the business small business I was telling about earlier. We went through a few institutional rounds.
Yeah. I
think our first institutional round of $3 million from a real VC who was managing other people's money, other institutions' money. And it was like the best, most well-respected VC at the time in Texas. Yeah. So the validation that me and one other guy had built this company that some of the smartest VCs in the country thought was viable. Yeah. Like the year prior, they had 4 exits, including Favor, that totaled up to $1 billion. So the fact that like they saw us as even close to anything like that was very validating, that like I could do something at that scale. That's what I always wanted to do. So it wasn't about the money, because it was millions of dollars, but it wasn't about that. It was the fact that I've always done smaller entrepreneurship projects or businesses, and the fact that, I can compete at this level with the big guys. Yeah. Even though I'm not in the Valley, even though I'm not a dev, even though I'm, didn't go to an Ivy League, like forget all of that. We're in that league now. And that was very rewarding.
It's in the way you think. It's what you talked about earlier. You're good at seeing market inefficiencies and figuring out how to leverage them. That's the key for you, or that at least that's what it sounds like. What was the most, without breaking any of the covenants that you mentioned earlier, what was the most heartbreaking moment in the process?
In startups, especially super high growth ones that are taking venture money, you have to rely on the rest of the team a lot. And because there's no fact checking in startups. It's like no one has time. You don't have the resources to have double people doing the same thing. In a big company, if you don't do your job, someone else will catch it and the machine continues. In a startup, everybody has their job, or like the entire thing crumbles. So you got to leave your back open. And I'm a very like, wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm very frank. And, I got betrayed by a few people that I had put a lot of trust into. And going back to the personality styles and being self-aware, like I'm very, if you look at those personality metrics specifically, I've been in the Enneagram lately. My highest value is trust. And when I give you my trust, like I give it all. And when I lose that, like that's the thing that hurts me the most. Yeah. Is betrayal, I guess you could frame it as. And that hurt, because it wasn't just a good friend betraying me. It's like I've put everything, I've lost everything for this business, and it's like a baby to you, because it is. I was in like a bad place after all this happened for a few months, and it just took me a while, like psychologically, to get right. And I was reading a lot of articles from other founders who had similar habits more often than you'd think, fortunately. I was reading articles from other founders that this had happened to, and there was this guy in Austin who actually had an exit and he sold his business, but he still felt depressed because he had lost himself. And it was weird because it's hard to explain, but it's like the business is you. So the way that it was snatched from me, it almost took away like who I was.
Yeah, it was an identity crisis.
It was completely. So that was hard. That was hard to lose who I was.
Yeah. I'm sorry that happened.
I'm back.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So before we get to that, what was the most important thing that you learned? What might surprise our listeners to hear?
We got lucky, right? Timing is a lot in business, et cetera, et cetera. And we executed well on a lot of other things. But the hardest part of the business by far is raising money and putting together all those documents and stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks that like the operational aspect or getting clients, like if you have a good product, people will buy it. If you really care about it, you'll make sure it gets done. But the one thing that you can't learn anywhere, again, is the VC angle. And these guys have lawyers out the wazoo. They have millions of dollars that they're waving in your face. And there's contracts that I sent contracts to 4 attorney friends of mine, like 4, literally 4. Everybody was like, this is too niche. Like, I don't want to tell you anything because I don't even know what the hell this is. Yeah. And you're a founder making $30,000 a year and you just have to trust everybody, very informed counterparties. And so I think that people would be surprised to know that the hardest thing about at least a venture-backed company is raising money because it's very complex and it's something that you've never done before. And it's make or break at the same time.
And you have commented previously about the value of having your own attorney separate from the process.
For sure. Yeah, that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned in the whole process. And I don't want to blame that specifically about what happened, but you think you have to remember that corporations are themselves people. So your company attorney isn't representing you. And I thought about this more after our conversation, and I think it applies even earlier than that, because now that I've done a lot of other business deals, I would say that as soon as you can get a mentor, that's something that I've always done from a young age. And you need like a life mentor and then like a career mentor. But so a lawyer is probably, you need a lawyer earlier than you think. And that's sad to say, but we live in a very litigious society, and even your first like contract out of work, out of college, your first job employee agreement is, you should probably have it looked over, because that you never know what's in there. And at the end of the day, we're an at will state, and there could be some nasty stuff in there. And especially when you're dealing with large amounts of money, that's when people use those clauses. Yeah. So mentor first, but lawyer definitely as soon as you can. And I think when I phrased it to you, I said, you think you can't afford a lawyer, and that's how I always thought about it. But now, I think about it like, I can't not afford a lawyer. Yeah, I find a way to afford the lawyer because it is really important.
So post-fetch, you're back. How'd you get back?
My girlfriend at the time helped me a lot. So leaning on friends and family was important, because you go through like this phase of like your first failure, right? A business failure. It's like, man, am I not the entrepreneur I thought I was? Especially getting into the game so late. A lot of people talk about like, my business did so well because I didn't know any better. And that matters a lot. Like, it helps so much, which is another reason why I say get started now. But I did know better. I knew I was really, really good at banking, and I knew I could make a lot of money. And I knew I still had a lot of friends that would hire me that day. So it was hard to think like, maybe, yeah, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but am I really as good as I thought?
Yeah.
And so, that was hard, but leaning on them. And then I hired a resume writer, career coach that I met through the A&M Club here in Dallas. And she was an old rag, and this was like her second life, second career. And she helped me a lot, more so from like a mental perspective, really, because I didn't end up using my resume to get the next job. But the way she phrased it was like, you just got to get out there and get back out there, because the way your brain is wired, the way you work, you just have to go win again, and that'll bring you back.
Yeah.
And it was true. As soon as I went out there and started getting out there, started doing stuff again and feeling productive, I felt a million times better. So I think the most important thing is to just dust yourself off and do it again.
So talk about then your current situation. What are you doing now? What do you like about it? What's maybe not as fun about it? You've got a couple of different gigs. What do people need to know about life as it exists currently?
Yeah, so staying super busy now because, like I said, I jumped full force in, which meant that like I had a million things, but I was used to it because when we were building Fetch, I was concurrently president of the Dallas A&M Club and also volunteering at some other stuff. So I was like used to juggling a lot of plates. So I put a lot more on my plate again to feel useful. So after Fetch, so I left Fetch and right as they were raising their Series A, and it was a very large Series A round for Texas.
Yeah.
So I got kind of like some of that goodwill, I guess. So people started Googling me and LinkedIn messaging me. And I just started helping all these startups. I would get probably 5-6 messages a week from founders across the country and Canada, just asking like random questions, how to raise money, how to create a go-to-market, blah, blah. And I had a lot of fun because I like talking about business models and building stuff. So did that for a while, ended up on a few different advisory boards through that. And I'm on few cap tables now, which is fun. It's a lot easier to make money that way.
Yeah.
And did that for a while, but then I was like, okay, I'm ready to start a new project. Like my head is clear. Helped a buddy formulate his go-to-market for a while, and I was full-time there. Met him through the local accelerator or the local startup network. But then COVID hit, and I was really a drain on resources. So I was like, okay, like I got to go to someone that's going to survive this environment. So another friend called, and he's like, hey, we're looking for a growth revenue guy. I was like, you're in luck. I'm available. It was 3 days after I had left my other buddy's shop, so very great timing. But it's worked out well because they're developing a technology around construction of big multifamily developments. And I have a very deep network of multifamily developers from Fetch, so it's worked out well. So I'm serving as a chief revenue officer there at e-Longation, and so they've been in stealth developing the technology for a few years, and now I'm helping take it to market.
Fantastic, man. We wish you the best of luck with that for sure. Rapid fire. What do you consider your most valuable failure?
The college dresses business was a really good learning lesson because it taught me that it reminded me that I don't like business for the sake of making money, and you can't treat businesses as just money machines. There has to be an intrinsic reason, or else you won't have the willpower to make it.
Like that answer. What do you think is people's biggest misconception of you?
Probably that I just like to be social all the time and run around and stuff.
Yeah.
And I do because I like to keep my network up, and I like to learn from people and talk to people about things. But I do have another side where I'm just constantly going. My mind is constantly going to where I can stay home for like a month and not do anything. I'll be okay too.
Yeah. If you could have anyone as a mentor for one day, who would it be?
A lot of greats out there. But for me, so my favorite books to read are audio biographies. And my favorite one of all time is Sam Walton's Made in America.
Mm.
And to me, he embodies what an entrepreneur should be.
Yeah.
He not only innovated, he also had an underlying set of morals, really, as to what he was doing and why he was doing it. And he also kept his eye on that as time went on. He still did a lot of things himself, and worked in a very, very old age. So I just respect a lot about him.
Other than get an attorney before you think you need one, what is the most important advice you would give to yourself exactly 5 years ago?
Balance out. I think I'm a very, very intense person.
Yeah. Okay.
Extremely intense, and you have to be to do what I do. But I sometimes can be a bit of a Tasmanian devil to where I just got to get there. Like people always say, like, Henry, if you put your mind to something, like you just do it. But sometimes I forget about the collateral damage, unfortunately. So sometimes I'm rude to my parents, or I forget to call my grandma, or, you know, more closely, like I lose friends. Like I lost a lot of friends building Fetch because just didn't have time. And I was more focused, like I needed to build Fetch. And, you know, on a more personal note, like I've lost very serious relationships because I wasn't thinking enough about that. I was just so focused on the goal. So just be more cognizant of those around you and how you're affecting them as you're working towards whatever you're trying to work towards. Balance.
It's important stuff. Okay, what is the book you've given most often as a gift? Or if you're not a book giver, what's your favorite business book?
I am. As I've grown larger, or as I've managed larger staffs over time, I started buying this like in huge bulk because I gave it to everybody, even interns. It is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi.
That's a great one.
And it is by far the business book that changed my life the most. Everybody talks about networking, and I always have valued networking, but networking for the sake of glad handing, as he described it in the book, is pointless because you're thinking of it as like a point system where like who's going to win and he owes me one. And when you stop thinking about it like that and think of it like as a family, as a network, and everybody helping each other, maybe that's where my buddies come from.
Yeah. No, I love that book. That was the first business book that I read after college.
Really?
That guided my entry into sports. That guided my entry into the film business. Not as much back into business school and into this, but still, great book. Love it. Great recommendation. What is your fondest memory of TAMU?
I think joining a fraternity gets a bad rap. People focus on all the bad stuff, the little trouble we get into, but everybody gets into trouble. It's college. What really fraternities taught me, at least, was like a lot of function within a large organization that has structure. For me, I've always been extremely headstrong, and I just do whatever I want. Because like I figure out how to get it done. So like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I guess, unfortunately, it's taught me like, just do it because you can do it. And so having to function within the constructs of like a pretty tight organization, especially where you really care about the other people. So you care about the collateral damage. That taught me a lot about business and how to function as an adult. You know, once you graduate, like they let you run around doing whatever you want as a kid for a while. It's like, okay, go. You got to be a perfect adult now. So I think that helped me frame a lot of life. Joining Lambda Chi.
Anyone you would like to send good bull?
I want to send good bull to. I had this professor. So management majors, or actually all business majors, end with a capstone, where it's a case study and all the majors come together, and they usually try to do like one of each together. And so I don't even remember this guy. He's probably not even there anymore, but by far my favorite professor, and truly the only one, sorry, all my other profs, but truly the only one I learned anything from, because once you graduate, like you start using the tools of that trade, and no one asks you to bust out your TI-89. But this professor was a very successful executive, and he was like an adjunct prof. And so he would always cancel classes and just leave notes on the door without telling anybody, and everybody else hated him for it. But I loved him because I knew that he was out doing real biz, and that's what I wanted to be doing. So his advice that he gave us was, look, guys, one time he came back from like Bermuda with a tan or something. He's like, I know everybody's mad because I keep doing this, but let me tell you something. I make such and such. He made like 400 grand just off the 4 boards he sat on for public companies. And he's like, look, I make more from this than I do teaching. So what do you think I'm going to do? He's like, the best advice that I can impart upon you guys is join as many boards as you can, as soon as you can, because, you know, he made it sound all fancy and super chill. But ultimately what I got was that the application, the real world application of what we were learning is more important. The concept of what we were learning and the real world application was way more important than understanding something to the nth degree.
I like that. What was his name?
Unfortunately, I don't remember. I have to look it up and send him a note or something for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Henry, we got it done.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
For sure. It was fun. Thanks, guys.
For our MasterCast top 3 takeaway for Henry, I wanted to talk about his advice that you just have to know the unit economics of an industry and find an inefficiency. You don't have to be an industry expert.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting. There's so many people who have said that on the show, and even people who have said they're not passionate about the industry where they've started a business, that they don't necessarily have a natural passion for it. And that just seems so hard to me, that it's to be operating a business in an industry when entrepreneurship is so hard, and then to not have a natural passion or even knowledge about the industry. But it does seem like the trick is to know the unit economics and find an inefficiency.
I've never been able to think about business that way. And maybe that's just a weakness in me. It seems like that is a sufficient condition for creating a successful business. I don't feel like it's a necessary condition, but I get that that's the way Henry approaches it, and it really works for him. And you know, if you can do that, I think that you will be successful. I don't think you have to be able to do that, though. And it's not...
You don't have to be able to find the inefficiency?
No, you don't have to be able to think about it in terms of unit economics. Like Henry might be able to, like if we were to talk about different business opportunities or different businesses that have become successful, he might be able to say with each one, no, here's what I mean by saying look at the unit economics and find the inefficiency. And I might say, oh, I get, like if we spent enough time with enough examples, he might be able to convince me that is indeed the way it works. And it can always be framed from that perspective. But at this moment, as I sit here now, I'm not convinced that it can always be framed that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could see it. I'm not sure that unit economics and finding the inefficiency is all that Henry's good at. It's what he can put his finger on, maybe. But
yeah, true.
I think it seems necessary to understand the unit economics in order to understand the market that you're in, or at least to have someone with you who can do that.
Right. To cite another example of what I'm talking about, if you're able to create basically an entirely new market, I think you could probably argue that something like the iPhone basically created a new market, because there were smartphones before that, but the idea of making it something that would be useful for everybody, from grandparents all the way down to toddlers. Not that it's necessarily a good idea to give a toddler an iPhone, but the point is that a Palm Trio, like I had a Palm Trio 650 for a couple of years and I loved that thing. But would it have been useful to someone who didn't want to use it for basically business purposes? Maybe not. So my argument is that the iPhone was about finding a need that wasn't being met. But I don't know that it was necessarily about finding an inefficiency within a given market. I think if you're creating a new market, the calculus of what Henry's talking about looks a little bit different. And the process of evaluating it looks a little bit different. Nevertheless, it's really amazing that he can look at those situations and see that. That's quite a skill to have.
Absolutely. You talked about not necessarily seeing it that way. And I think for the second takeaway, the way I don't necessarily see business, he talked about how he doesn't look at entrepreneurship as a risk, but he definitely talked about losing everything and putting it all on the line, and how he couldn't necessarily bring a family through that process of the ups and downs, because I think there is a lot of risk there. He's not seeing it. And on the flip side, I can see how, okay, he lost everything a couple of times and it was fine. It was okay. He survived it. So I see both sides of that argument. I just don't think I could put that much on the line.
Yeah.
I don't have that tolerance.
I don't at this stage in my life. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that was a different thing, but not so much. And I mean, 15 years ago, I did that kind of thing once, and 12 years ago, I did it again. But that's not my risk profile anymore.
Well, and I think it is different with a family. And Henry talked about the toll of choosing entrepreneurship or being chosen for entrepreneurship and the toll that's had on his personal life. And
yes, he used the term cresting 30, which I appreciated. And
yeah, that's really great.
Yeah. And I understand why he doesn't see it as a risk for, where he was or where he is in life. And the idea that like it's because it's really a question of what's most important to you, and the idea of creating something really meaningful. I respect what he's trying to do there.
Absolutely. And it gives him a lot of energy and joy. So for our final takeaway, I thought what he talked about with the difference between running a small business versus entrepreneurship was interesting. He said running a small business was like the pizza shop, where it's known product that people accept, and you really are interested in the operations of a small business aspect of it, versus entrepreneurship, which is really creating a new product or possibly creating a new market, but certainly creating a new product, and that you have to bring people to even understand that product and why they need it. And that distinction was helpful for me to hear, just not something I had really thought about the difference between. But I think there is a difference in maybe the type of person that would gravitate to each one, and maybe just a little bit about the different skills that are needed for each of those things.
Sure. The thing that I think we have to be careful of in that process is deciding that one is better or worse than the other, because Henry didn't say this, but it could be interpreted by others, or someone else might say it in such a way as to make, starting a small business sound sort of less than in some way. I don't think you said it that way, and I don't think he said it that way, but we have to be mindful that starting a small business is an incredible risk. And there's...
Well, and I think
I don't know what I'm going for here.
No, I think it's a good point. And it requires a great deal of innovation on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't necessarily, the example he gave of a small business in an existing market with an existing product doesn't necessarily require your customer to rethink what they need and what you're doing. Yeah. And I think equally challenging, probably equally stressful, feels equally risky. So not taking anything away from that, but it likely does require a slightly different skill set. Whereas, you hear a lot of times that entrepreneurs are unorganized, right? They're so innovative that their brains don't necessarily think in the most organized manner. Whereas I could see a small business owner needing to be a little bit more, where the skill set that might benefit them the most is being more methodical about things, being more organized. Not that they always have to be, but it was just an interesting distinction to think. And I think too, for someone out there to think, oh, I don't want to go create a new product, but I really do want to run a business. I want the piece of running a business. That's the part that I want to do, which I think resonates with me a little bit more than going out and necessarily creating a new product. But the running a business is the part that sounds fun. I think for people to hear that there is a place for both of those things is important. There's a place for the more operational side, and there's a place for the more innovative side. Yeah. And that probably the two need to meet up somewhere and work together.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good way of summing it all up.
Love talking to Henry. Want to go hang out with him in Hawaii one day.
Yeah, you guys can go wakeboarding together.
Yeah. Or paddleboard in Hawaii, but I think there's places to wakeboard.
Hang 10, Brosephine.
Shred. All right.
All
You want to
right.
close this with a quote?
This is an interesting one. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction. There is only a divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others. Martha Graham.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
An MBA from Texas A&M University can take your career to a whole new level. With full-time and weekend options, Texas A&M suits your schedule. So get a better gig. Visit mba.tamu.edu.